Madame Caillé, Monsieur Goldberg, Monsieur l'ambassadeur, Madame la secrétaire d'État, Mesdames et Messieurs. Pour moi, jeune historienne, l'attribution du prix Jacques Rozenberg représente une appréciation motivante et une belle reconnaissance de mon travail. Toute ma considération et mon estime vont à la fondatrice de Prix, Madame Caillé, à la Fondation Auschwitz, Mémoire d'Auschwitz, ainsi qu'à son jury pour le grand engagement avec lequel il encourage les jeunes chercheurs. Depuis l'année 2002, des études réalisées par de jeunes chercheurs méritants sont récompensées par le prix Jacques Rozenberg. Le fait de pouvoir me compter parmi ces chercheurs est un grand honneur pour moi. Je remercie la Fondation Auschwitz et son jury pour l'attribution du prix, pour l'invitation à Bruxelles et d'avoir rendu possible cette belle soirée. Je tiens également à remercier Monsieur l'ambassadeur pour ces merveilleux panégyriques. Et merci aussi à Monsieur Daniel Wessau pour l'organisation parfaite de cet événement. Je me réjouis beaucoup d'être là ce soir. Permettez-moi de parler en anglais, la langue que je maîtrise mieux et qui est aussi la langue de ma recherche scientifique. My study before Auschwitz, Jewish prisoners in the pre-war concentration camps, uncovers a little-known chapter in the history of the Shoah. The history of Jews in the concentration camps is usually told from its end. Mass murder in the gas chambers of Auschwitz and Majdanek, pictures of mass graves and heaps of dead bodies in Bergen-Belsen and Buchenwald, of surviving prisoners barely skin and bone. These pictures overshadow the comparatively prosaic pre-war years. In popular reception, the camps are associated with the later stages of the systematic mass murder of European Jews. And research, too, has long overlooked those pre-war years. Compared with the enormous scale and the organized nature of the destruction perpetrated during the war, the camps of the pre-war years must pale in significance. To be sure, only the war could enable the transition of Nazi anti-Jewish policy to mass murder. But these crimes, I think, cannot be understood without turning our attention to the events of the 1930s. What we see there is how, in the course of 7 long pre-war years, the camp terror against Jewish prisoners, the perpetrators grew accustomed to the notion that the life of a Jew in the camp wasn't worth very much. And without this habituation to the systematic discrimination, exploitation, and violation of Jewish prisoners, the transition to mass murder would have probably not happened that quickly. To rescue the pre-war history of the Nazi camps from becoming the mere prelude to the wartime genocide, I studied it with different questions in mind. I wanted to find out about the role of the concentration camp in the process of exclusion of Jews from the German state and German society, a process during which Jews were marked, isolated, and terrorized as the prime enemies of Germany's new racial state in the making. What I found is, already in the very beginning, there was unbound violence. Nowhere was the exclusion of Jews as a discriminated minority, the degeneration from German citizens of Jewish faith to outlawed Jews in Germany, enacted more radically and more brutally than in the concentration camps. From early on, Jews in the camps had to fear for their lives. The percentage of Jews among the deaths was always disproportionately high. The camp's ostracizing effects were evident to the excluded themselves. Julius Meyer, a survivor of pre-war Buchenwald, realized, and I'm quoting from his testimony, "Here in the camp, they distinguished between prisoners and Jews. So we are now officially the Jews, end quote. Concentration camps as newly created sites of terror that forcefully sorted so-called community aliens from valuable Germans were thus instrumental in the process of creating a racially pure Nazi state. Seen this way, the pre-war years were a crucial phase of transition when discrimination took place right in the midst of German society, its members responsible for working towards or preventing the exclusion of the Jews. And indeed, many Germans participated in the terror by denouncing their Jewish neighbors, business partners, former friends, and even lovers to the Nazi authorities. Using camp terror against Jews, the Nazis tested the limits of their extending power while seeking maximum influence over the German public. By violently persecuting Jews as a presumed common enemy, the regime sought to fortify its bond with all those whom it counted in the envisaged people's community. Today's festive occasion of the Prix Jacques Rozenberg also grants me a valuable moment of self-reflection, of locating my work within a greater context. What can the story of the Jews in the pre-war camps tell us about our own present age? An historic moment in time in which we currently see unfold the refugee crisis in the most traumatic side. With my historical study of National Socialism, I would like to contribute to a broader debate about the dynamics of social change, the mechanisms of inclusion and exclusion, as well as the establishment and cementation of stereotypes and prejudices. What we recognize in the historical picture of the transformation of German society into a racially defined people's community are fundamental questions about mobilizing forces and the participation in nationalistic extremist movements and their practices of violence. But we also see a refusal to participate and sometimes a very impressive manifestation of resistance. These processes do not unfold in abstract categories of governance. They affect concrete people, those people that constitute society. When Germany in the 1930s was rapidly national socialized into a privileged in-group and a discriminated out-group, this process of desolidarization between Jews and non-Jews was reflected in many day-to-day situations, in countless decisions to tolerate, to participate, to profit from persecution, or to protest against it. Decisions taken by numerous individuals involved. Hence, it is the members of society and their individual actions that ultimately condition social change and the reordering of social norms and values. To Jacques Rozenberg, the name giver of the prize, such references to the present in the study of history were important. In a most impressive way, his luck of surviving the Shoah became, as he said, his rage de vivre. It drove his artistic work as well as his social and political activism. As a painter, he chose strong and lively colors to bring his experience to the canvas. As a fighter for humanitarian rights and for the dignity of men, he was committed to act against anti-Semitism, racism, and fascism still virulent in our society. Fighting for a better and for a more just world, for him, was a lesson to be learned from history. It is with deepest respect for the life and works of Jacques Rozenberg that I receive the prize created in his honor. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.